So my name is Maria Kari. I'm an attorney and I represent Dr. Afia Siddiqui. How many of you guys have heard the name of Afia before? Okay, a lot more than I expected, Savannah. Good. If you'll allow me to just summarize in a couple minutes who Afia is and was. So Afia Siddiqui started her story right here in Houston. She was briefly a student at University of Houston. And after that, she went to MIT and spent the next few years of her life studying in Boston, where she was also raising her children. On March 30th, 2003, Dr. Siddiqui was driving to Karachi Airport to catch a flight to Islamabad. She had a meeting with the minister, and they were going to talk about creating a new education curriculum for Pakistani children. On the way to the airport, the family's car was surrounded by a bunch of men. Afia was dragged out, along with her children, 3 of them, all American-born. They were snatched from her, and that was the last she saw of them. Ahmed, the eldest, 6 years old at the time, was kidnapped, and he was sent to a prison in Kabul, where he would remain for 5 years. Mariam, 3 years old, was forcibly adopted into a white Christian family, and her whereabouts were unknown until the star witness of our case, then President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, helped find her, and she was dropped off unceremoniously with a name tag in front of her aunt's house in Karachi. And baby Suleiman, he was 6 months old at the time of the abduction, and his whereabouts till this day are unknown, but eyewitnesses, including the 6-year-old brother Ahmed, remember seeing him fall and hit his head and blood coming out. What happened to Afia herself has only recently been confirmed by my co-counsel Clive Stafford Smith and I. After she was abducted off the streets of Pakistan, she was renditioned, which is a fancy legal term for kidnapped, and she was sent to a CIA black site in Afghanistan. So black sites are American prisons around the world, and they were set up after 9/11, and Afia was held at one of them called Bagram. For 5 years, no one would know where Afia was, if she was even alive, but there was a lot of rumors, right? During this time, the Western press dubbed her as Lady Al-Qaeda. Many claim she was a terrorist mastermind, the wife of a high-level Al-Qaeda representative. Some even said that she would be part of a blood diamond smuggling ring. But the saying is that truth is always stranger than fiction, and in this case it certainly is, because Afia was actually sold by the Pakistani government for $55,000 to the CIA. And this is something Pervez Musharraf, who was then the president of Pakistan, bragged about in his book, about how they had sold many people to the Americans for sizable bounties. Now, while Afia spends those 5 years in Bagram prison, she's subjected to the most degrading and horrifying cruelties a human can be made to suffer, that a woman can be made to suffer. She's brutally raped, she's sexually assaulted over and over, she's made to watch the torture of children she thinks are her own children. But after 5 years, they realize that they have nothing on Afia. She's useless to them, she has no intel, she's just an ordinary lady, and it's a case of mistaken identity, so you would just release her, right? Except at this point, they have a bit of a PR nightmare on their hands because she's become wildly famous in Pakistan. Her sister, Dr. Fawzia Siddiqui, who moved hell and high mountains in her sister's support, had led at one point a march of 1 million people in the streets of Pakistan for Afia. So the US government and the equally complicit Pakistani government can't just let Afia loose onto the streets of Pakistan, so they decide to have her killed. And they would have been successful had it not been for a brave tailor who got in the way of Afia and the Afghan National Police, who had been sent to assassinate her. And actually a few months ago, we tracked down this tailor in Ghazni province in Afghanistan, and he remembers this day clearly. He's also provided us a statement for our case. So when the plan to ambush and assassinate Afia fails, you have her detained with handcuffs in a room at the Afghan National Police headquarters where the Americans show up. Now, if you go by the versions that the prosecutors said in the Southern District of New York, innocent American soldiers enter the room. A highly trained soldier puts his rifle down unattended, and Afia, in a murderous rage, grabs unattended rifle and begins shooting up the room. Mind you, at this point, she's been in prison for 5 years. She's all of 85 pounds. Except the only person to get shot and killed in this whole episode was Afia herself. Multiple times in the abdomen, she barely survives. She's flown to the Southern District of New York, which has a 99% conviction rate. There's a grossly unfair trial, more on that later. and the only witnesses allowed on her case were cherry-picked by the US government, and she gets 86 years in prison for attempting to kill US officials. And she's serving those 86 years right now in Fort Worth, Texas, so a 4-hour drive from us. I go every month or 6 weeks or so to see her. I'll be going, inshallah, next week. And I'd love to, I'm restricted for time, but I'd love to tell you guys about who Afia was as a person, who she is today. But I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a political prisoner in America. If you type in political prisoner on YouTube, as I did while preparing for this talk, you'll see that you consistently have our mainstream media publications do pretty terrific documentaries on political prisoners in China and Thailand and South Asia and Syria recently. America has a political prisoner system. We have a political prisoner problem. We don't admit it because then we would be admitting to our complicity in creating that problem. What is a political prisoner, right? So according to Amnesty International, a political prisoner is someone who has been imprisoned for their political beliefs or their actions against the government. But my client Afia was never a political dissident. She had no anti-US government belief. She engaged in no political activism against the US government. In fact, her views at the time matched the views of a lot of social justice-oriented folks. For instance, she was very vocal against the Bosnian genocide, but so was Bill Clinton, right? So in early 2000s, you have Afia living a pretty normal life. She's studying at a top university. She's passionate about social justice, like so many of us are. She's speaking at conferences similar to this. She's raising 3 babies while dealing with an abusive spouse who she eventually divorced. And she's thinking deeply about the way she's going to improve the education system once her PhD is complete. Now, Clive and I have been investigating this case for a while now, and I've actually just returned from New York, where the judge finally gave us a court order to go through some classified documents that had been available to us. And while I was sifting through, 2 decades worth of material on this woman's life, the whole time I keep thinking, why did this happen? Why did they do this to her, right? She's clearly not dangerous. And it's only recently occurred to me that Afia was an easy target, right? She was caught in the same dragnet that ruined the lives of hundreds and hundreds, mostly men, who found themselves subjected to that post-9/11 anti-Muslim hysteria, during which we had a perfect storm, right? You had bad faith actions by the US government and faulty intelligence that then ruined the lives of people who look like us. And that's the irony of Afia's case, right? By putting Afia on the FBI's most wanted list and associating her with terrorism, slapping that sensational title of Lady Al-Qaeda on her, locking her up for 86 years and throwing away the key, the government's actually turned her into a political prisoner. The system politicized Afia more than any